Hey guys, welcome back here to Limit Line Studios for another video. I hope everyone's having a wonderful day, and we're going to talk about the R12 a little bit more, right? As far as adjusting, tuning, all that. And we're going to talk a little bit about the CRP2 pedals as well, but it's mainly the Moza R12 V2, okay? This thing, I've been messing around with it all week, adjusting settings, adjusting all sorts of stuff. And this thing has just opened up a whole new area of tuning and adjustments for me as far as going from the R5 to the R12. So, the previous videos that I have seen on the R12 is not up to date as far as the Moza Pit House software goes. So that's what we're going to cover today. And we're going to go over some things that I particularly have found very useful in this. So I would like to show you guys what I'm doing as far as setting up the R12 for ACC and go over some basic fundamentals of what exactly you should be doing or looking for. Now, these aren't going to be perfect for, say, you, but this is what I'm running, and this is what I have found to be really good with the R12 on almost every car. I've driven a few different cars on this base with these settings, and they all feel great. They all feel great, right? The Mustang, the Porsche, the McLaren, the Ferrari, the Beamer, those have all been pretty alright with these setups. So I believe that these setups here will help you out as far as knowing what the car is doing, feeling the track, feeling the behavior of the car and the track, and it helped me out a ton. So as of the last video, you guys know that I bought the R12 and the CRP2 pedals. Now, for a week now, I have been messing around with adjustments, and it's been quite wild as far as, getting used to this, unlike the R5. And I'll show you some in-game settings as well, so then I can show you what I'm using on there, and you guys can really dial it in. And this is just a base. You can totally take this, adjust it to whatever suits your style or preferences, okay? So, starting off with the maximum steering angle, I had that set to 540. That's about right where I like it on. I like that on the R5. I like that on the R12. That never changed. The force feedback, on the other hand, when I went from the R5 to the R12, on the R5 I was at 100% on the force feedback. On the R12 I'm running about 80% because 12 Newton meters is a ton. It's a lot more to deal with and stuff like that, and it's it's a lot more. So about 80% feels more or less around, like, I don't know, 9-10 Newton meters. And I know what you're saying, well, what's the point of buying an R12 if you're just going to knock down the force feedback anyways? And I get that. I do. I understand that completely, because you might as well just go buy the R9, right? And just have that at 100%. But the R12, it's so much more. I can adjust it more if I wanted to. There's a lot with the R12 with adjustments that you can do that even the R9 doesn't quite give you, as far as like feeling the immersion of what the wheel gives you. So the force feedback, like I said, I have it personally set at 80%, and like I said, we'll go over what I have in ACC as well. And so 80% doesn't sound like a whole lot, but I do have it a little bit more turned up in game, just to counteract, just to balance it out a little bit more. So the force feedback is set to 80%. We'll go over to here. On the maximum steering angle, again, I have them both matched to 540 degrees. That's your steering rotation from left to right and top dead center. That is what that's for, if you didn't know.
And so I have both of them matched at 540 degrees. The soft limit stiffness, I have it about in the mid, right, and the mid range there. The R12 is very responsive. Okay, there's a lot of torque in it, and there's a lot of things that go on with this wheelbase that gives you a lot of immersion, a lot of react back, right? And so I have it set about half. I've been seeing other videos in the past that these guys have got that set up a little bit higher, but me personally, I like it about at half, at about mid, right? The soft limit strength, I do have that set to hard, because the stiffness I don't have cranked up all the way, but I do have the strength set to hard, and that feels really good in hands. Now, this is done all on the KS steering wheel. This is a 300mm wheel. I should bring that up. If you don't know the KS steering wheel, that it is it's from point to point, from at one end to the other, it's a 300mm width wheel. So it does help with numbing some of what the car is doing, what's going on the track, and what the base is doing as well. And so the KS steering wheel does help out with that. You may find some of these settings a little bit weirder when you go to more narrower wheels, and that may change. Okay, so the soft limit gain force strength, I do have that set on, and what that does exactly, it matches what's going on in game. So if the in game strength is up higher, then the Moza Pit House will automatically set that up higher, and so you can follow with that. The maximum output torque limit, I do have that set to 100%. There it is, that's 12 Newton meters of torque set at 100%. Okay, the force feedback, like I said, is back at 80%. The force feedback reversal, don't worry about that. That's nothing to worry about. With this kind of wheelbase, I do suggest the hands-off protection, and I also suggest getting the it's made by Moza, it's a shutdown button. I do have one of those ordered. It will be here in like the next couple days or so. And so if you guys want to know a little bit more about that, please leave a comment down below, and I'll do a little review video on that. And I do suggest, with this much torque, with this much power, with this much reaction, I do suggest having that hands-off protection on there and having that shutdown button ready to go. Right? This is a lot of torque, and I don't want to get hurt, and I would hate for someone else to get hurt as well. And so this, 12 Newton meters is a lot, and it can totally hurt you. I've already been caught in a bug in a bad state where I got a little crazy with the wheel, and it kind of whipped me around, and it, not gonna lie, it hurt. It definitely did. That's a lot of force, and it's instant. It's super fast when it does happen. You don't see it coming whatsoever. The steering wheel inertia, now, so it depends on which wheel you're running. I am running the KS steering wheel, and so it's a preset, and it sets at about 1100, and that's like perfect for me. I don't mind that being, I don't want that any higher. I definitely don't want that any lower either. And so, I'm still learning what all these little tabs do and everything, so don't mind me about if I stop and cut or whatever. So maximum wheel speed I have set to 100%, and I don't want it with this amount of force and response back. You don't want it any faster. I have brought it up faster, and it's quite wild. Now, remind you, this is a setup for ACC alone. I haven't really tried this on anything else. As far as racing games go, I haven't tried that on anything else. So, moving on to the advanced settings, this is where it gets a little chaotic, and it becomes kind of controversial on whether you should be having Moza Pit House software controlling more of what the in-game feeling does, or should you let more of the in-game tell what Moza Pit House should be doing. And
yes and no, and we'll get to that in here in just a sec. The force feedback in whatever that is, that's set at 0. There's no need to be having that whatsoever. There's no need to be having that. The natural dampening I have set to 33%, and that has helped a lot with, you're not feeling everything, right? And this wheel is already on such a high level of bringing that immersion to your hands, so you don't want that cranked up super high. Natural friction I do, on the other hand, have set up to a high, up to 80%, and that is, it's, I believe I can set that up higher. I would almost want to bring that up higher, but I'm still figuring this R12 out and figuring out the Moza Pit House software. Like I said, they've updated it and all sorts of things have changed. The structure and the layout of everything has changed a lot. Natural inertia, I have that set to 400%, and that doesn't need to go any higher, especially on the R12. That does not need to go any higher. The natural inertia is basically it simulates a inertia effect with the independence of game output. A higher natural inertia makes the steering wheel feel heavier while turning. Now with the 300mm wheel, it's it helps with that, right? So that is very nice with the KS steering wheel, is that it makes this R12 a lot more manageable to take on, just right out of the box, So the wheel spring strength, I do have that set to 0. There's no need to to tighten up anything. That's there's no need for that. The game springs, now this is all these are game effects, game tunings, and how it reacts in game, where I'm having Moza Pit House take over what the game is doing and not what the game take over Moza. So the game spring, or that basically it's what your rotation is backwards. That snap back. So I have that set at 15%. This is all set at 15%. I'm still messing with this a little bit. This is where it gets real tricky and takes a little bit of time to figure out. Like I said, there's no, at least I haven't found one, there is no video out there on YouTube that talks explicitly about this kind of stuff and where the R12 needs to be set up at. The game dampening, game inertia, game friction is all set at 15%. The speed dampening is also set at 50% at 60 kilometers per hour, and that brings on a whole new level. I wouldn't go any quicker. I wouldn't go any slower. 60 kilometers per hour is perfect, right where it needs to be, and that helps a ton. So hold on one sec, we're gonna up this one sec, sorry guys, there we go, we're gonna up that just a little bit. Moving on, I do have the temperature control strategy up on radical, and I'm gonna let you guys know now, it doesn't get hot. The R12 does not get hot whatsoever. That thing, it stays super cool. I've been playing like on an ACC for hours on end, and like on the R5, you can almost cook a meal on that thing. That thing is a little heater buddy. Where this thing, for even on radical, it keeps its own temp down. It does not get very warm at all. And so that is one thing that I love about this R12, is that it does not get warm, doesn't get hot. You can lay your gloves over there and you pick, it's not like, the R5 whatsoever. The R5 is just a little toaster oven. That's all that thing is. That thing is obnoxious as hell. So the R12, I will say, after many tests and many hours of playing on the R12 already, I've already noticed a massive difference in heat alone. I would, after a race or whatever, or in between races, I go and set my gloves up on top, and I go to reach for my gloves, and they're, scalding hot. You can almost put those things on there. Now, that's a really bad habit. Probably, I don't know. I do it, but I do put my gloves back on top of the base here, okay? And I've been doing it on this, and you don't even know that the thing's running. You know, this thing is so, it manages itself. It really does. And it's such a relief, because the R5 was always like, oh, it's getting too hot, or, you know, whatever, you know. And so this thing really manages itself very nicely, and good on Moza for doing that, because this is such a massive machine, massive piece of hardware. I would hate for that thing to get hot. It would it melt cables, you know. And that was another thing I was really worried about with the R5, is that I would be afraid of that thing melting down cables. That would be absolutely terrifying. So the R12 is very polite when it comes down to managing temperatures. We're going to move on to the effect equalizer. Now, I have this straight across, and the reason for that is because I don't want these weird ups. You know, I don't want this weird, you go up and over bumps and it's real neutralized, but then you hit like something else, or, you know, the car gets sideways, and the wheel goes off. You know, it erupts with this, you know, crazy vibrations or whatever. I don't want that. I don't want that whatsoever. And so I kept it, everything's at 100%. I kept everything flat at 100%, and that seems to be about right where I need it. That's, you know, there's no need to go any higher. I wouldn't go any lower either. I think 100% across the board is quite all right. So base 4 feet, the FFB curve, I left that as your standard. There's really nothing to adjust. I've never really messed with this, and like I said, this is still new, and so I haven't messed with this at all. But it's a linear line that goes from 0 to 100 at an angle, you know. So let's see, miscellaneous, base Bluetooth is on, work mode, and the race status indicator, or the base status indicator, is also on. And I'm not quite for sure what even that is, to be honest. Enables this light on the front of the base. Well, the R12 does, R12 V2, I mean, does not even have a light on the base, so there's really no point in worrying about that. Button mapping, you don't need to worry about either. Moving on to the CRP2 pedals. This is where I've been spending a lot of time in, because it comes with like your dampening springs and wedges and all that. And that is where I've been messing around with a lot, and I think I have it set about right where I want to. On the CRP2 pedals, the spacers, the little dampening pieces I have in there, I have, let me think, it is 3 yellow little dampeners and then 3 gray little dampeners. Now on the little booklet that it gives you like what like a GT3 or GT4 car may feel, or an F1 or a hypercar, what that brake tension may feel like. And Moza does a wonderful job as far as doing that. Me personally, I don't like a super stiff brake. I don't like standing on the brake. I like the soft squeeze. I find that it's easier to manage and to, you know, get into that braking zone a little easier, and it's easier to let out of, and it's easier to get back into. So with the CRP2 pedals, I have, you know, the clutch we are not going to worry about. The brake is a linear with the angle at 100%, and that seems to be right where it needs to be. In the booklet it tells me a 60-40 split or a 50-50 split. I have the angle set at 100%. So with the throttle, I do have a curve. It's just one of the presets, and it helps with throttle engagement. That's exactly what that helps with. The throttle comes on quicker, and, you know, of course you're kind of managing the throttle a little bit more when you're doing this, but it makes the car so much more responsive. At least I feel the car being a lot more responsive out of like tight chicanes or whatever the case may be. It comes on a lot stronger, and so that is something that I have always done since I got into Moza, is always set the throttle curve
at what that preset there on the screen there, as you can see. So let's hop on to ACC. I'll show you some settings that I have set there, and we'll go from there. So I'll see you guys then. Alrighty guys, so we're back in ACC on at the settings there. The gain I have, these are all my settings for the R12, and so you can match this. You may like how your settings are, but these are how mine are, and this is how I have mine set. So the gain on the force feedback I have at 65%. Minimum force and dampening is at 0. There's no point in having that when I'm already having the Moza Pit House software taking control over that. The dynamic dampening I have set to 100%, and the road effects I have set at 5%. I do like a little bit of, a little bit of react in the wheel as you're going through corners or whatever. The frequency, of course, is at 400 hertz. That's just that anymore. That's your standard for ACC. You can't go up any higher. The steering lock, I have that matched with the Moza Pit House at 540 degrees, and then the steer, the other 3 is just set to, I believe that's honestly default. So, yeah. So that is my settings for the R12. We'll hop on the track and I'll show you a little bit of what the wheel's doing, and we'll do some hot laps, a few hot laps, and give you guys a good idea. Alright guys, so we're back here in the Mustang on some Moza, or on Monza. Geez, it's been a long week, can't you tell? And this is what my setup looks like from this angle. So this is kind of weird having my setup like this and the camera pointed at me in a different way. So with that being said, this is just a little bit of a reference of what that wheel looks like in your hand with these settings adjusted the same. Don't mind the vibration noises, that's just totally normal, it's fine. And so this is what that looks like. It honestly feels super stable. Now, of course, that does come with the car setup and stuff like that, and it also depends on the car as well, because like I've noticed like on a front engine car, the wheel is much lighter, and I never noticed that with the R5, but with the R12 I feel that a lot more. So this is, like I said, this is just with the Mustang. I'm not getting into any other car. There's no other car that exists to me. So, I might be biased, but that's just how I feel. So, with that being said, this is, driving the R12 has been a great experience, and I can't explain that enough. The R12 has been just a powerhouse, and it's been so much fun messing with the R12, and feeling what a lot of force feedback feels like. Eventually I will be upping the force feedback as I get more used to it, but as far as this goes right now, I'm just trying to get a mindful setup going, and it's just been an awesome experience having the R12, and I think Moza just killed it out of the park. Now this isn't, if you guys want to see more on me talking about the R12, go to my last video that I posted. That I will leave I'll leave a link in the description below. But the R12 and the CRP2 pedals are such a great match together. They really complement each other, and I love how they do that, So the R12 has been such a whole new animal to take on. It's such a bulldog, and you're fighting it all the time, but at the same instance you're growing with it, right? It's figuring you out as much as you are figuring it out, and it's so wild to eventually get an idea of what you're both trying to do, and then the orchestra starts singing. Honestly, it's awesome to feel, and yeah, I came into that corner a little hot. That was fun.
But you know, as you can see, there's a lot going on there. You know, there's a lot of force feedback there. You know, so it's a great time. It really is. You know, I'm gonna have to go and start going to the gym and start working on leg day, because the upper part of my body in a few months is going to be on a whole new level. I feel this thing, it's a workout. It absolutely is. But it's been, like I said, it's been so much fun messing around with the R12. I almost wish I never went to the R5, but if I didn't go to the R5 first, I wouldn't have the respect that I do for the R12, you know, right now. So, you know, me personally, the R12 is perfect. I wouldn't suggest anything else. Now, of course, if you are getting into this, I do suggest going with something smaller. I don't suggest putting this in your fingertips the minute you get it. You know, the minute you get into this hobby, I wouldn't suggest getting an R12 right out of the box. That's, you know, that's ridiculous in my opinion. You gotta learn and work up to that, I believe. And the R12 is definitely something that you can easily work up to with time and effort and all that. So with that being said, the CRP2 pedals, on the other hand, have been quite a whole different story as far as figuring out the brake bias, you know, the brake tension and all that. Like I said, I've been, you know, messing around with the CRP2 pedals a lot also, and figuring out dampening and how I want, you know, the brakes to feel and everything like that. And that's been a little bit of a struggle, because I'm trying to mimic exactly what I want. And like, you know, I went from the CRP lights to the CRP2 pedals, and you know, I believe that brake with the accessory kit was not stiff enough, but I didn't want something that I had to stand on, and that's not what I wanted whatsoever. And so, you know, going and figuring and adjusting the pedals has been quite a hair puller. I haven't really been enjoying that, but I think I have the pedals exactly where I want it this time, and this feels wonderful. Since on my review, if you haven't seen that video, go check that video out again. But when I did that review, I basically had no setting, no tune, you know, nothing set up for the R12 or the pedals. So, you know, during that video, when I did drive it a little bit, like, I was standing on the pedals, the wheel was throwing me all over the place, it was doing all sorts of things, and you know, it took me about a week to figure this out. And it's because there's not a whole lot of information on exactly what what I'm looking for. I've tried a bunch of different pieces, you know, what other people are doing, and they just didn't quite fit. So I had to kind of mend and glue my own way of racing on the R12 and with the CRP2 pedals together to figure out exactly what I'm looking for. And so, you know, we're just, you know, it's been just a learning experience, and it's been honestly really fun to be messing with it. So on that note, I think that is all I have as far as the R12 for you guys. So if you guys liked the video, comment down below, leave a like, and hit the subscribe button and turn that bell on, and I will see you guys in the next one.